Two clarifications before you get into the episode. First, the podcast that I refer to is actually Knights of Last Call, and it's not a podcast even, it's a YouTube channel. That's the video that I discuss at some point with Lewis. The other thing is the Pathfinder Savage Worlds Kickstarter fucking crushed. They did $411,355, and it was less than 3,000 people who contribute to it. So the 10 million users of simply D&D Beyond, just that small number of people. We're not even talking about, internationally, the number of people that are going to get exposed to Paizo because of the 5 ebook. Anyway, Paizo did really well with Savage Worlds. They're going to do much, much better with a 5e D&D book. Without further ado, here's me.
Oh man, no, it's one of the 23 commandments of 4. Don't mix dairy and baby.
I'm Brodor, and this is Why We Game. This episode's guest is Lewis Porter Jr., writer, game designer, prolific producer of PDFs, and industry rabble-rouser. Lewis, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. I mean, I'm only a small industry rabble-rouser sometimes.
No. Okay. So here's the thing. And I'm not, and we talked about this in the pre-interview. I won't bullshit you. I spend a lot of time trolling around the internet and trying to figure out what my voice is, right? My background is retail. I did it for a long time. I was a member of Gamma. I was on the retail board of Gamma, blah, blah. The point is, I came across you and you reminded me of me. Right? Like, here's a guy who has an interesting perspective, who's got a great voice, who is behind the curve with the technology and the flashy production. And so there was a lot of great content out there, and I think it gets lost in the flash. And it kind of reminded me of music or film or whatever, that there are these indie influencers out there. And that's kind of the space where I'm at, because it's difficult to break through the noise. And you broke through the noise to me because you have a really sort of no BS delivery when you talk about things in the industry, whether it's a review of a product or a review of a big event. So I wanted to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, I guess I describe it as I'm not trying to please anybody. That's why I've got that kind of advantage. I mean, a lot of people get into this business because they want to work for a big company. And, I've only wanted to work for one company on one thing. Dungeon Magazine, I want to do an adventure for them, and that's it. And everything else has just been stuff I've been interested in. And so when you live like that, I don't have to kiss a lot of butt. I don't have to, I really like this guy when I don't. And I tell people, you don't have to like me. You're not dating me. You don't have to like, just don't BS me. If I catch you BSing me, I'm going to call you out for it. That's the way I am. That's just me.
People, when you talk to them or when you're reviewing someone else's subject or somebody else's video, you're not afraid to say, I disagree with this or I don't like that. And there are many, many voices, particularly in the gaming industry, that don't want to rock the boat at all.
I don't even think it's like rock the boat. I think they're looking for the next job. They've got to, hey, I can't talk bad about this guy. He's a friend of mine. He's going to line me for the job. And, I don't have that need or desire. I do this because I enjoy this. When people say, oh, I enjoy it, but if it's how you get paid, you don't really enjoy it. I've been doing this long enough to know that, look, there's money in this, but there's not money. Well, not anymore. I mean, God, you got WOTC buying people for 140 million. So what do I know? But it's like anything else. If you're serious about it, you can take it serious. You can do serious work. If you play around, you can play around. And you can still be serious about it, but you can still have fun in it. So many people are about the egos, and I just like, I can't stand that kind of stuff. That's not why I do this. I do it as an outlet for my enjoyment. I mean, I've done, I can't say I've done. I've released 800 plus products over 22 years. It's basically a product a week. And at this point, I can put out a product with my eyes closed. I put out things that I enjoy. I don't put out things I have to put out. I stopped doing that a while ago because it it didn't please me. You know, I put out books that no one in the right man would put out. I put out a source book for D20 Modern on dogs. Who's putting out a book?
All right, so
who's putting out a source book on dogs?
Okay, so here's where we're gonna go. This is the wank I'm gonna go down. So we're gonna before we make the gaming character that is Lewis Porter Jr., we're gonna start at level 0, work our way to 1, and then become pro, right? Prestige into freelance writer. But before we do that, I need to drill down just a little bit more about what you were just saying. Can you expand what you were just saying? Expand a little bit more on it.
Well, what part specifically?
The dogs. Did we have dog specific feats? Did we have breed bonuses? Like, so for example, my dog, who is a proper cunt, by the way, he is, I know the C word's a big one. It's my favorite word in the language, but my dog is half schnauzer, half poodle, which means he's very smart. He's very aware. He's hyper manipulative, and he's a dick. So I'm wondering what kind of bonuses I get for playing a schnoodle.
For me, it came up, but I'm a big fan of dogs. I've had dogs most of my life, and weirdly enough, I'm a hound kind of guy. I like hounds. They get me. I like hunters. You know, I grew up in Connecticut, so outside, not a big deal. And so it's that kind of connection. So when I did this book, I'm like, I want to do man's best friend. There's a legit reason why it's man's best friend. And they know. You can look at a dog, and if it's your dog, it's like, you do that, they know what to do. And it's like, they didn't actually have it for gaming, and especially for D20 Modern. I just said, we need to book on dogs. And everyone's like, you're insane. Why are you doing a book on dogs? Like, because dogs are cool. Who does not like a dog? And like, well, cat people. I don't trust them. They like cats. That tells me all I need to know about them. Dog people are respectable. Cat people are cat people. I understand. And I put it out, and I think, we've always sold copies of it, after 10, 15 years. But it's like, it was never supposed to be a hit. It was never, I did it because I wanted to. And I think if more people designed stuff they really wanted to, not for the money and stuff like that, you'd have better types of games. Now, with that being said, I think some people make games that are just straight garbage. It's too esoteric. It's not what I consider role playing. A lot of guys have tried things and failed, but I'm okay with that. You tried something cool. Didn't work out.
Now, is that because you're an older gamer? Is there, because I really believe that as we age, our brains congeal to a point, particularly as middle-aged men, where we just don't care for things to be different anymore. And so, I like interesting things. Mm-hmm. I like it to be interesting. I mean, it's like people like, old school gaming. I didn't like old school gaming when I was a young school gamer. I didn't like that. For me, gaming really came alive, I'll say 3 different points. The first point was Top Secret. When I played Top Secret from TSR, that game was everything to me. I played that game so often, it should have been a crime. It really should have been a crime. And I love that game. I still, this day, still one of my favorite games, always enjoyable. The second one being Marvel Superheroes. I'm a comic book fan, have been for 40 plus years. And when that game came out, all my comic book knowledge that was useless knowledge became super perfect for the game. And they also put out one of the best books I've ever read for any role playing. And this is my own thing. They put out the Ultimate Powers book. And it is a great book. It's all about superpowers. And it's like every superpower you can imagine. And they didn't get every one, but they got a whole lot of them. That was pretty impressive. So, and I've always loved that. Marvel's original face rip system was simple. You can teach anybody in 20 minutes. People see the characters. Oh, Spider-Man. Oh, I get it. Perfect. And you can play in seconds. And everybody gets it. It's not really complicated. And I think the next really big change was like 3.0, 3.5 when that happened. And when that happened, I had put out my first true role-playing game system, not 0.3.5, called Haven City of Violence. And it's a neo-noir action-adventure role-playing game. And I built a system for it, and basically it's an update to the Top Secret system. And that was really what it was. We're paying homage 110%. And then the OGL came out, and everybody said, oh, OGL. And then D20 Modern came out. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll do something for D20 Modern for it. And I started making this stuff for D20 Modern because I like modern stuff. And it just got to a point where it's like, it's silly. I got to convert my book. Because everybody says, oh, is it D20 Modern? I'm like, no, it's my own system. Oh, I don't want to play that. You're like, okay, I know what's going on here. So, you got to go with the crowd and what they want. And we gave it to them. A lot of people loved it. I loved doing it.
And it was fun for me to do. I got to do a game I wanted to play. And, did the campaign world, put it out. God, I mean, even when I think about it, that game, I don't even know how this happened. This is so weird. InQuest magazine, back in the olden days, what Wizard Press used to own, who did the Wizard magazine, the old magazine. They found out about my game. They gave me a 2-page spread article in it in one of their magazines, one of the early ones. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy.
And this is Wizard Comic Magazine.
Yeah, well, it's actually, it was a sister book. They're InQuest.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah, because InQuest was the gaming supplement, right? Okay,
right.
iGrok.
Right. And then somebody in Hollywood saw it. And they reached out to me and they're like, hey, I saw your game and I saw what you're doing. Would you be interested in selling the rights of it to do a movie? And we're talking, this is like 2002, maybe 2003. And I'm like, sell you the rights? He's like, yeah, like I'm like, what? Wait. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do what, if you want to make a movie out of it, why wouldn't I sell you the rights? So we made a deal, sold the guy the rights. John Rogers, who still does stuff today, he's a creator of I See It, and I can't think of it now. TNT show about the thieves, the group of thieves. I cannot think of the name of it.
Oh, so, man. And there's a role playing Leverage.
Leverage, thank you. He created that. He's also a hardcore gamer. He's worked for TSR, he's worked for WOTC. He's just a gaming guy who just happens to be a writer for TV. And he was supposed to write the script for it. And, we got caught in development hell and nothing ever happened. But it was like, wow, somebody saw my game, thought it was good enough to be a cheesy movie. And here's where it gets really funny. He pitched my movie and another movie at the same time. The movie that got made instead of mine, Cowboys and Aliens.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, I guess that happens.
Can I ask a nosy question? Because I know that people always want to know what freelance writers get paid. To option your RPG into a film, what were they going to pay you?
Well, that's the funny part. Because I thought it'd be like, $1,000 or $2,000, nothing major. It was, I'll describe it like this. It wasn't high 6 figures. It was very low 5 figures. But still, I was like, this is crazy. They give money for this. And they had the option, for 18 months. Nothing ever happened, but I get to keep the money. So I think that was a good time. That was good to me.
So how did you get introduced to Tabletop?
Funny enough, I was living in Connecticut. And I just moved there. This is like 1981, if my math is still right. And we just moved from Dallas. And I'd been there maybe like 6-7 weeks. And I'd seen guys playing D&D. And I was like, what is that? And, we're talking, I was in 5th grade. So we're talking, good Lord, 1981-ish. And I'd never seen it. I was like, what are they playing? And then we took a trip back to Dallas for one weekend. And I saw a buddy of mine who was there. I hadn't seen him in like 6 weeks. Actually, it might have been 6 months, I'm thinking back. And he's like, hey, there's this great new game called D&D. I'm like, what's that called? I'm like, what's that? He's like, oh, you got to play it. So we started playing, and that's what got me hooked. And I like D&D. I've always been a fan of D&D. But I was like, I get it, but I'm not a fantasy guy. I like fantasy, but I'm not like some people are like hardcore. And I was like, And then I found Top Secret. Now I'm a big spy, urban crime guy. And I'm like, this is the greatest game ever. This is, oh my. And yeah, I played Top Secret like crazy. I loved that game. That game, I say, shaped my ideas of how the games I wanted to make. I only want to make things that are cool, only things that are fun. I liked a lot of spy stuff, so I did spy stuff, I did crime stuff, and that always came up over and over. And, that's kind of how it got to me. And I've been a comic book fan just probably longer than I was a gaming, and it kept coming around. Because I'd work at comic book shops, they'd always have gaming stuff. Like when Palladium did like the Turtles and the Justice Machine stuff, and I was like, I know this. It's like, and I kind of got hooked that way, and I kept playing through high school, then in college, and then I got out of college, and I was living back in Connecticut, and a buddy of mine was working in his own fantasy world. And I was like, oh, this couldn't be too difficult. I mean, how difficult to do a role-playing game? And we're talking 96, 97. And I was like, well, this shouldn't take too long. I mean, how difficult could this be? So then I did what became Haven, but under the original name was called Point Blank. the action adventure role playing game. And I was like, and really what I did, I took, for lack of a better term, I took Top Secret and just ripped out the stuff I didn't like and then put it on. And so this is what it is. And then over time I was like, no, let's change this, let's change this. And then in the 2000s, you know, I got some money together and I got it printed. And I was like, indie printer. I was like, yeah, I did it all indie. It was great. And got it released. And, you know, we must have made 2,000, 3,000 copies. And, you know, we sold them. And it was doing well. And this is back when, Ossium was the company doing our distribution. This is back when 3.0 was on. The guys at Ossium were the guys who burnt Green Ronin on their first print run for Mutants Mastermind. So these guys basically took the money and bounced. And they were in Seattle, which was kind of weird too. And they took some of the money for my stuff too and bounced. And I was like, oh. And it was not good, you know, but I didn't have a lot of money into it. At the same time, I think I discovered, well, back then it was RPG Now. And they were selling PDFs online. And I was like, oh, they're selling PDFs online. Well, let me get online. And when I was doing it back, you know, the early 2000, probably 2002, it was like myself, Gareth Skarka, who's with Adamant Entertainment, and Phil Reed, who's Ronin Arts. And Phil is now like the head guy at Steve Jackson Games. And at the beginning, it was just like the three of us. There was like a couple other people, but it was like we were like actually just putting out stuff. And, you know, everyone was like, oh, no one's going to buy PDF. That's stupid. Who'd want to buy a PDF? I'd rather buy a book. And that ran for like a little while. And the minimum you could check out was $5 at the time. So all the books were $5. You had to put books together. And we just got tired of it. And it drove us crazy. And even though I'm not a fan of Phil now, I think Phil did one thing amazingly brilliant. Phil put out a product that was like less than $5. He put out a product that was like $3. It was a couple pages. Put it out. And we all were like, oh, we can make smaller books. We can make smaller books and they can buy more and then they can check out for $5. And really that revolutionized everything for us. And it's funny when you're looking back, you're like, holy cow, we were really stupid. That seems very obvious, but it wasn't at the time. I mean, this is like, you know, the early Wild West. And then we started putting out stuff and, you know, I put out a little bit of stuff. And the book that really got me, I would say popular and got me really thinking, oh, I can make money as this. We put out a book for Mutants and Mastermind's first edition. I can't even say we. The writer I hired, Lee Hammock, another comic fan like me, was like, "Oh yeah, we can do this." I was like, "Well, let's do a Powers book like we did with Ultimate Powers book. Let's do one called Power Corrupts." We go, "That's great." So we did 50 powers they had not seen for Mutants and Mastermind, and we put it together. It was like $2 or $3 per copy. And by this time, Monty Cook was selling online, and Monty Cook just started getting popular. And I'm still like, you know, still a small guy. I got on, we put up Power Corrupts, and within like a day, we sold 189 copies. And back then, you know, you sold 20, you were cheering. So I'm like, oh my God, oh, and it's crazy. And we were number one. We were number one for sales. I thought I was like, this is the best. It can't get any better. The next day, Monty Cook released something. And I'll never forget seeing it. It was like the top 20 books. And for like the first hour after he released, he wasn't on there. 3 hours later, he was like number 20. 5 hours later, it's like number 6. And I'm like, I'm number 1. And I knew it was going to happen. Later on the day, he blew me off number 1. But at that point, we didn't know like how many people were actually buying things. Because, you know, everybody's in their own little silo. And we talked to each other. We weren't actually giving out sales numbers. But I knew I sold 100 some, you know, like 100, almost 200 copies. Monty blew past me like it was nothing. So we knew there was more money being out there. So I think that was the moment we went from, oh, this is just fun and games to, oh my God, you can actually make a lot of money at this if you do it right. You know, I got very lucky. I would describe it like this. The first year in 2002, I was making about $100 a month doing PDF sales. Next year, 2003, we had quadrupled. We went to $400 a month. And I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. This is it. And then in like 2004, I got to about $1,600 a month. And, you know, I always knew there was money, but I didn't believe there was money, but then there was money in it. And everyone started getting into it. So, you know, and back then it was still the Wild Wild West. I mean, well, Phil and I are not friends now. At the time we were slightly opponents, but, you know, it was kind of respectful. And then, you know, I crossed some lines because that's who I am. I'm going to cross some lines. Because at one point it was like, well, I do this, but you can't do that. It was kind of a gentleman's agreement. And I was like, well, this is stupid. Why, if I want to do something in a genre that I won't like, why can't I do it? So I did that stuff. And then I did a book called Weapons of Power Armor Destruction. And we took the rules that were in, I think it was D20 Future. I mean, modified them to make power armor, like Iron Man. Because I like Iron Man. Iron Man's one of my favorite characters. Real simple. And it started selling very well. What I didn't know is that Phil had really produced a product similar to mine, but it wasn't called that. It was like the power armor was in it, and he handled it a totally different way. But my sales were blowing past his. And he called me, and I'll never forget this call. This is the moment where it all changed for me. He called me up and said, hey, yeah, I read your product. Yeah, I wasn't really impressed with it. I don't think it's very good. You know, if I was you, I would take it down. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. I don't think it's a good product. I don't think it's going to sell very well. I would take it down. Now, I didn't know that he had a product out that was exactly similar. I didn't know that. I really, legitimately did not know because I wasn't looking at it. I wasn't thinking about that. And he called me up about it. And I was like, oh, this is Sunday morning. Remember, I was driving. That's why I was like, okay, well, thank you so much. And I hung up the phone. I was just like, cell phone. And I'm like, I haven't heard from this guy about anything. He tells me I should take down a product. And I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. And then I saw the sales pick up. It seems like people liked it. And I think that was a moment where he didn't like me because I did a product like that. And, it had me feeling a certain kind of way. So to retaliate, and this is what I tell people, this is the way you retaliate for something like that. So he started putting out products for spaceships. What I did, when I'd buy his product that he'd do, like he'd put out his product like 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. By 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock that same Tuesday, I'd have a product that had items that were the opposite of what he would do. So if he had a shield that prevented radiation, well, this thing would cut through that shield for this. And so that was, and I would do that. But this is how I did it even worse. I would get one out same day. The next day, I would do another product on the other side of the word beat, and another product on the other. So his one product would sell, and I had 3 other products that people would be like, oh, cool, and mix and match them. So basically, I was making his customers my customers. And it was petty, 100% petty. Don't care. And I think that's what made us, pretty much like, pretty much enemies, as they would say. And at the time, he was doing very well. He was like the top guy. He was a top indie guy doing stuff, and everyone loved him. And he was in with people. He was very, very in with people. And I wasn't. I was always going to be on the outside, didn't care. I was just making my own thing. So he and Gareth Skarka became like buddies and tried to team up. And they were doing a lot of stuff together, a lot of good products. I can't front. They made a lot of good, smart products. And they were like coming for me. They're like, you're just garbage. We're going to get you out of here. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to find every way in the world to annoy you on every level. And I'm a real petty guy. I'm really petty.
Where does that come from? Seriously, Lewis, because sometimes with the guest, we deviate from the gaming because I want to understand, because you seem like a traditional East Coast person. You are polite and respectful until you're not.
I am born and raised East Coast kid. Chicago born, grew up East Coast kid.
But where does the petty come from?
Oh, it's real simple. I don't like bullies. I'm like Captain America. I don't like bullies. I don't care where you're from. And guys who try to bully me, and I'll tell people, look, I'm much bigger than I was when I was young. When I was a young kid, pudgy, glasses, people used to poke on me. I hated that. I hated that then. I hate it now. And people used to try to bully me. And it got to a point, and I used to let people do that when I was younger. So it got to a point where I was like, this is stupid. I'm not letting anybody bully me over anything ever again. And I just got to that point. And then, I learned that in college. I think that was the best experience I had at college because, I dealt with guys and, I went to college at an historical black university, Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. And when I went in Baltimore, I was there from 88 to 93. And we're talking height of the crack craze. I told you ever watched The Wire? That was actually how it was going on. That was actually true. It was really that kind of crazy. And, it's like a lot of rough guys over there, and they were looking for guys just to, just turn you upside down, take your money kind of scenario. And I was like, what? I'm not going to happen to me. And I met a lot of guys who were really rough guys, good guys, but they were like, don't fuck around, fuck around, find out. And you knew there's a guy, I can't call him a bully He wasn't a bully. He actually was a really nice guy, but I was terrified of him. Brian Washington. Brian Washington, thin guy from the east side of DC, and it's Prince George's County, which is a really rough area. It's like the cops are notorious for pulling people out of the cars and beating them with nightsticks. That's a typical thing, not even a big issue. And these guys grew up around there. And Brian Washington, the real thin guy, had a little bit of cut on his face. Brian looked like he probably, he'd shot a couple of people, probably. He was in college. And Brian liked me for some reason, but I never understood. And I was always terrified of him. And Brian was a couple of inches taller than me, thin guy, but like just straight muscle, was in the ROTC program. And I was in that too, and they'd call me Porter by my last name. And Brian would be like, "Come on, Porter, throw a punch at me." I'm like, "No, Brian, I don't want to do that." He's like, "Come on, Porter, come on, come on." I'm like, "Brian, man, I don't want to do that. I don't like that." And Brian was like, "Come on, throw it." I was like, "All right." So I hauled back. I was like, and I throw the punch. He catches it in his fist like it was nothing. He's like, "Pop!" He's like, "What you doing, Porter? What you doing? You gonna punch me? You want to punch me?" I'm just like. So that kind of killed me, but that dealing with those kind of guys taught me, hey man, you stand up for what's yours. Even if you get your ass kicked, it doesn't matter. Stand up for yours. Don't let people bully you because they will bully you for the rest of your life, and you'll always regret that you didn't do anything. And I think that's what got to me. Like I said, I don't like bullies.
So let's then step back. So now you have and forgive me if I mischaracterize it in a theatric way, but you have a calculated campaign of product trolling.
Oh yeah. And what made it so much fun for me is that I knew they couldn't keep up with it, and I knew they hated me for it. And I knew, and it became very political because I became the outside guy. And because everybody wanted to work for somebody. So everybody had to kiss people's butt and all this. I didn't have to do that. I'm making everything just what I want for fun. And they hated that. And, I was doing different genres. I was doing superheroes. And this culminated to Green Ronin pulled my license. It was the fight I was having with Phil. Oh, yeah. But they were, Phil and them were tight. It was not a big surprise. I knew they were. Phil was making products for them.
But you do a lot of Mutants and Mastermind stuff.
Right, but it didn't matter. I wasn't in the in crowd. They pulled my license. And I was like, okay, I understand. No problem. I then took out, I said, I make sure I will not use anything that's your stuff's restricted. So then I built my own little license, this OGL superhero license, and pulled out all the stuff that was pertinent for Mutants and Masterminds first edition, and then just sold the stuff. Just sold it, kept selling stuff and that was, follow the rules of the license like it's supposed to. And Phil and I were still getting into it. Gareth and I got into some really stupid stuff. He got to a point being so arrogant and cocky, and I couldn't take that. And I'm just like, dude, you went to New York for 5 seconds. You put out 2 books. You barely do anything. You're not as good as you think you are. And we just got into it. That's what it was. And I was okay with that. But I just kept putting out products. And, one of my secret plans that I figured out very quickly. And, it was very much like, if you can put out a product a week, just one product a week, it doesn't even have to be a lot of pages. Just put out a product a week, you're going to dominate the market because most people take 2 to 3 weeks to do products. But if you can get one, if you can keep doing one a week guaranteed, no matter what, you will win. And that's kind of what I did. I kept putting out a Mutant and Mastermind product back then, one every week. And then I was doing D20 Modern one a week. And it was just getting stuff, just getting the numbers up very quickly. And most people couldn't do that. And I was finding a lot of new writers who were like, hey, I see you putting out stuff. I'm like, look, we can't pay you much, but we're going to pay you. So, I worked with a lot of guys before they became big. And, a lot of guys like Lee Hammock worked with me on several projects. And then he went on to work for video game companies. And he's been doing that for the last 15 years, I think. Owen Casey Stevens worked for me way back in the beginning. The guys, the Were Cabbages, who now are a lot of popular guys who work for Paizo, work for me. I'm notoriously, I like new guys because it's they're fresh, they're hungry, they're like, let's do some cool stuff. Yeah, let's do some cool stuff. That made it better for me. And I think people knew, when dealing with me, no matter what, you were going to get paid. I wasn't going to screw you with pay. If I had to pay out of my own pocket, hey, you're getting paid. Because at the minimum, I want people to be like, hey, it was a great experience and he paid me. Because most people don't pay, which I didn't realize how many people got burned on books and stuff. And I was like, nope, I paid. And, that was a thing for a long, long time. And then the thing proved me, I learned an important lesson. You shouldn't push it too far, but you should. You should. So Phil and I were like an open conflict online, and people are drawn this side. I was an asshole. He was a genius. They basically kicked me off of RPG Now. And they're like, look, man, we got to pull you off. And I'm like, all right, well, fuck you guys. Fuck you. I don't give a fuck. And I'll sell other places. I'll be okay. And for 10 months, I was off there. And I mean, I was in bad shape. I was about swirling, maybe going out of business. And at the time, the money I was making was paying my car payment. So I needed that money. And it was bad. It was a bad 10 months. And then Drive-Thru bought RPG Now. And the guys at RPG Now were White Wolf guys. And they'd heard rumors about me. And they said, look, we'll put you back on the site, but you can't get in conflict with people online. And I'm like, all right, look, I'm not trying to cause any problems. I'm just trying to make good products and put stuff out. And, there shouldn't be a problem. But these guys act a certain way. I'm not trying to deal with them. I don't care. I just want to sell my product. Like, fine, great. So they bought RPG Now. And a couple things happened. They weren't big deals, but they were. I didn't realize until after the fact. So they were increasing the percentage of what they were taking from, at the time, it was like 20 to 25%. 5% difference, not a big deal. So all of a sudden, Phil Reed goes ballistic about this thing. Oh no, this is too much. Da, 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 da. And I'm thinking to myself, like, why is he freaking out? It's only 5%. What's the big deal? Da, 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 da. And it's going on. And a buddy of mine hit me to it. He's like, dude, he wasn't paying 20%. I'm going to bet you he's paying like 10, maybe 5%. Because think about it. He goes, 20, 25 is not a big difference. You're not going to complain about that. But if you were paying 10 and now the new company says, oh no, you got to pay 25 like everybody else, well, you just cut 15% to his margin. So his things have changed, or even worse, it's 5%. It's like, that's a big cut for him. For you, it's not a big deal. And I'm like, oh, that's what happened. So Phil got all hoity-toity and took all this stuff and went on his own with his own site. Said, I'm going to sell from here and people will love me. And I'm like, that's a fatal mistake. But if you understand what Drive-Thru was, it was a funnel. People come there looking for stuff. People weren't coming to your personal site looking for your stuff. Not the same. And no matter what, it wasn't going to equal that. So he left, and within like 9-10 months, he basically had closed everything down from his own site. He got a job. He had a job working back at Steve Jackson Games, where he's been there like the last 15 years. But me, being as petty as I can, because I am, I bought every product of his he had out. Any product he had that was OGL, I bought it. And I looked for all the content that was 100% open license, open content I could use anywhere I want, and I released it all as products. If he did it, I renamed it, put it out. Totally legit. You totally do that. Not against the rules at all. And I said to myself, if he ever came back, he couldn't use the same stuff to sell. He'd have to make all new stuff. I'm that level petty. Yes. And funny enough, about 4 years ago, he came back in the industry selling product. Stuff he'd already done, just the stuff that, was his classic stuff, just repackage it for a non-system. I mean, beautiful laid out stuff. He learned a lot of that, but like I said, he couldn't sell the same stuff he sold before. But I killed that market for him. Oh yeah, I am 100% petty. Yeah.
So why have you, because you've worked with a lot of big names in not just the tabletop industry, but people that have gone on to be names in the video game industry. Why have you stayed in the space that you're in? You never had the ambition, I know you said earlier in the interview, to really go and do work for the big guys?
I always thought, and I believe it still, even today, even the job I have, I've had the pleasure of working for large companies. They're horrible. Large companies only sound great when you're on the outside looking in. Once you get in, it's a political nightmares, backstabbing left and right. Look, I don't want to do that. I make the games I want to make. I make everything cool I want to make. Nothing is out of bounds. I don't care if you like it or not. I mean, we did a book. It's one of the books that I won't say I'm not proud of, but we did a book on abortion during the height of the abortion wars for D20 Modern. And we took it as a straight political situation, like just an operation if we're planning to do it.
Let me take a step back, just so, because it's past my bedtime and I'm medicated. I want to make sure I understood this correctly. You, during the height of the abortion debate during OGL D20, made a book about abortion.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We looked at it as a medical procedure. Like, how would you do this medical procedure? How could you try this in the game? What would be the repercussions of it? What are the we played it like that. We played it 100% straight. People freaked out when I realized that. So many people hated me. And it's funny because I'm like, oh, why do these people hate me? And it's like, oh, I get it. I say the thing that they don't want to hear because they know I'm right about things. They don't want to talk about it. And I cause conflict. They're like, oh, that's right. It's not me per se. It's the way I say it. And I'm one of those that's like, I'm going to tell you to go to hell, but I'm not going to say it.
I'm not trying to be a dick, but I think that watching your videos, sometimes you could be described as abrasive, but by the same token, obnoxious is a word, an adjective that has been linked with me my entire life. So,
I'm not afraid to make people upset.
Right.
I never have. And, if it's the truth, don't cry about it. Don't moan about it. Just accept it. Move on. When you start making excuses for yourself, that's when you start lying to yourself. Don't do that. Just accept it. Move on. And people know when they're full of shit. They know it. But they don't want to admit it to themselves. So they do. They've got to accept it. But if you accept it and move on, you're okay. But those guys don't want to do that. They want to blame it on somebody else. I didn't become famous because this guy stopped me. No. You didn't become famous because you didn't want to be famous. You want to do role playing? Well, then do it. Well, I'm a small guy. And I'm like, I'm a small guy. I put out stuff. What does that mean? Well, I can't. I'm not a good writer. I suck as a writer. Anyone will tell you. Anybody knows me? I'm a horrible writer. Not even. I can put together a good idea and plot, but actual grammar? Oh, God, I'm horrible. Horrible.
Okay.
And I'm never going to change. Never going to. I misspell a ton of words. I type. People at work are like, God, how did you graduate from college? I'm like, I can put together a sentence well enough that you understand what I'm saying. And it's like, and they were like, but you're a horrible writer. Yes, I'm a horrible writer, and I have a publishing company. Once again, what's important? How I'm writing it or the message I'm getting across?
A lot of your work, I don't want to mischaracterize it, but it strikes me as mechanically driven, because you strike me as someone who has, I'm going to guess that you're some kind of engineer professionally.
No, actually, funny. I'm a graphic designer.
Okay.
Yeah. Funny enough, I am initially I wanted to be a writer. And I found out quickly I was not built for that. And I was working for a little company doing publishing. Actually, what they were really doing was they're a comic book price guy back in the old days. A little place called Comics Values Monthly. They preceded Wizard by a couple years. And they were talking Richfield, Connecticut, tiny little place. And I was doing that kind of fun stuff. I'm like, this is fun. Well, we had a graphic designer there. And I was like, well, how do you lay out the page? How do you do that? So the guy showed me, and a friend of a friend knew a guy who was a professional graphic designer. Went to school, good guy, Jeff Juilliard, never forget him. And I was like, Jeff, I want to be a graphic designer. Could you teach me? He's like, yeah. And he's like, okay. So for an entire year, and we're talking 1993, for an entire year, he was teaching me on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. after I worked a 13-hour shift doing security, how to become a graphic designer, what to do, what techniques to do, and stuff like that. And within a year, I had enough skills put together that I could go and actually do some basic stuff. And then I just kept doing design every night because I was like, oh, let me just try this. And then I tried doing my own gaming magazine. And then I had to learn how to do more. And that started. And then I got into doing the role-playing games. I was like, and I just learned more and more. And I kept finding jobs that needed designers where I could basically have them pay for my experience. And I worked for Macmillan Publishing when I lived in Indiana. And as I tell everybody, I hated living in Indiana. Indiana's if I could nuke Indianapolis, I would. Not even a question. Oh, hate it. Was a passion. Always hated.
I guess you don't go to Gen Con.
It's funny. I lived there before they went to Gen Con. They started going, and I was like, oh, Indianapolis. Hate. And I've gone like 3 times. That's why I'm like, I don't care about it. I don't care. It's a horrible place. Don't tell me it's a nice place. You haven't lived there. If you've lived, I'll tell people, my parents are from Mississippi, the deep Delta part of the South. There's no place more racist than Indianapolis. I knew was bad, but holy cow, I was like, nope, hate this place. You remember, I'm an East Coast kid. I'm an East Coast guy, chip on the shoulders, 70 miles outside of New York City, grew up. So here I go to the Midwest, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I was like doing prison time. I hated that place. But I work for a company called Macmillan Publishing. You probably know them better for some of the books they do, like the Complete Idiots Guide, the orange books you see in the bookshelves. Well, they're the company who makes them. All those books, all the ones you see, are laid out by one girl. When I was there, there's one girl laid out a book a day. A book is about 250, 300 pages per day. I could maybe, if I was really, really good, do 10 pages of layout per day. So we're talking like 100, if I could do 100 pages a day, that was amazing. She would do 250, 300 every day, a whole new book every day. Boom, boom. And she was just a beast at it. And I learned from her how to put together books very quickly, what works very quickly, get it to work together. They can just repeat the process faster and faster. That's what I learned, and that worked for me. And that's how I put out stuff.
Where did your hustle come from? Your work ethic, just based on your 21 pages of drive-through RPG stuff, but then looking at your website and looking at your Kickstarter projects, and when do you sleep?
Sleep's for suckers. I mean, you don't need a lot of sleep. You know, you don't need a lot of sleep. Look, you get 5 hours, 6 hours sleep. That's all you need. Just work. And for me, I think I became even more. When I was younger, I just wanted to make money. I didn't know how to make it. They just think pays money, great. But then it became an ego thing, just beating out people on drive-through and stuff like that. And then I read a couple books that really got me into the business side of stuff. And one of my favorite books, a lot of people may have heard of it, and I believe it's a great book that changed my life. Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm a huge believer of that. So much so that book got me to another book called Cash Flow Quadrant, which really changed how I do business. Because before I was doing all the writing, I had to do all the stuff. Not anymore. I removed myself. I'm like, that's stupid. Why am I doing all the work? Pay professionals to do the work. You can sit back, do what you like, the layout, and make it amazing looking. And they can make great books. And you package them, and you pay them, and then you walk away. And that's it. And a lot of people couldn't do that. A lot of people have to have their name involved. I gotta write it. I gotta have myself about. That's ego. That's all ego. I don't need that. My name's on the company. Anything you make is gonna be for me. That's where it's important. I don't need to have my name on every book. I don't want my name in every book. I just wrote under a name of Simon Roquette. I wrote under that name for damn near 30 years. To see some of my products, and a lot of people don't know this, products that when I got bounced off, I was writing under Simon Roquette for other people. They're putting up my stuff. I did the layout. I used a fake name. I used them as the distribution. I paid them 10%, and I kept the rest. And they just handled everything for me. Yeah, it's like, dude, look, I'm trying to get paid here. I'm trying to make some money. I got bills to pay. This has developed me into getting into real estate. I told you, I use the money that I make on gaming to do other stuff. I bought a car, my first owned car that I ever owned because of the money I made on drive-through. And I kept telling people, there's money in this. You can make money. Oh, there's no money in this. Da, da, da. And people kept telling, I had a buddy who lives with me here in Florida. Chris knows, I've talked about Chris all my life. This is nothing new. Chris knew me when I was doing the layout and stuff back in 2004. And I kept telling him, you should get into this writing because you're a writer. You should get into writing stuff. You should write something. Oh, I don't know. I'm like, Chris, you should do this. This would be good for you. I told Chris this for maybe a decade. Didn't do anything. Now in 2020, I think he's put out like 2 or 3 products. He's known me for 20 years. He's put out 2 or 3 products. The same guys kept telling him, oh, don't listen to Lewis. You don't have to put out products. Don't listen to Lewis. I'm like, yep, don't listen to me. I don't know what I'm talking about. Don't listen to me. Don't have a clue. But, there's people who are hustlers and people who aren't. And I can't make you into a hustler. But if you listen to what I say, I can easily get you to a point where you make at least $200, $300 a month doing this, that you take home that's in your pocket cash money.
Yeah, no, I mean, imagine if you could do that in your spare time, just for the average listener, if you're making a couple $100 a month. And so if you're into role-playing games and you're like, hey, this is going to support me buying books, or, that's, a couple months later, I've got myself a PS5, assuming there's one in stock.
Right.
A lot of cool stuff you can do.
Here's my easiest play that people, when I did it initially, people freaked out. They hated me, and now everybody does it, which I think is hilarious. I did stock art. I had an artist who was working for me. I'm like, hey, I want to turn some of your art into stock art that we can sell. And he was like, okay. I'm like, well, how much do you want to keep, Lewis? And I'm like, you know what? I'll keep 10%. I'll keep 10%. You keep the rest. I will split whatever our drive-through what they charge at the time was, well, RPG now, the charge. But the rest of it goes all to you. And I've used that formula for the last 20 years. And, I've got, God, even when I think about this, I've got 100 some odd products, or probably almost 150 products of stock art available for sale that I make 10% on every time it sells. And they've been selling for 20 plus years.
And those are, if I'm not mistaken, one of your higher dollar items on your website or on drive-through.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're talking, these are like the average box is anywhere between like $8 to $10. And imagine 100 some odd copies. I'm going to sell, at least 2 or 3 a month. More like 10, but whatever. It's like that money keeps rolling in. And what do? I just take a little bit. And we did a sale once. I'll never forget this sale. And this was Storm Cook. I'm gonna say this. I know Storm won't be totally mad, but we did a short little sale on drive-through where we did you could buy our stock art 50 of them for $50. And I'm like, oh, Storm, we'll probably make maybe like $2 or $3 grand on stuff. He's like, oh, that sounds great. So it means I'd make like $300. Not a lot of money, but we'd be good. No. Storm walked away. And this is a couple years ago. This is probably like 6 years ago. Storm walked away with like 10 grand. And I didn't think we were going to sell that many. And I got myself a grand. I didn't think I was going to get him a grand. It's like, hey, free money, thank you. But he got himself a ton of money. And he was like, thank you. Let's do this again. I'm like, yeah, we're going to do this again. And we keep doing it every once in a while just to make, because we know we're going to get a bunch of money. And people, for some reason, don't want to do big sales. Like, oh, I can't do a big sale like that. I can't sell for cheap. I'm literally selling people light. PDFs are just light. Remember, it's a computer light. I'm just selling you light. You're giving me money for it. You can put whatever price you want on it. Just sell it. Just sell it. Best piece of information came from a friend of mine, Tony, God rest his soul. He said, what's easier to fold in your pocket? A comic book or a dollar? And they were in a comic book shop. It's like, dude, dollar, sell the thing. Put it in your pocket. Have a nice day. And people are like, oh, that's so radical. No. I got my girlfriend into selling on Etsy. And she just sold her first 3 products. And she's like, I didn't want to tell you because I didn't sell that many. I'm like, you sold a product. Someone gave you money. You are 100 times ahead of the game compared to anybody. It doesn't matter how many you sold. You sold one. Most people have never sold one. It's like, you're in a great spot. And that's the mentality I think people need to really focus on. It's like, it's not the price and it's not the amount. You got to sell your first one. And once you get your first one, you're like, oh, I can do this. And you find out, it's not that complicated. It's not really that crazy. I think the biggest person to motivate me to really do gaming was actually 2 people, Shane Hensley and Matt Forbeck. And I met them back when they were Pinnacle Entertainment, and they created Deadlands. I love Deadlands as an idea and a concept. Everything's like, that's cool. That's a cool Western. That would be amazing. And I was a huge fan of them. And just talking to both of them, they gave me tons of advice. I'd see them at shows. I would bug them for a long time. And I have to give them a lot of credit. They didn't choke me when they could have, and they should have. But I asked every question in the world, and they were always helpful. And, I would say the best, weirdest thing about both of them were they both were prolific writers. Like, I know Matt and Shane could write 1,000 words an hour. Easy. Like clean, good, cash money words. And, Matt's been designing stuff for years. And so it's Shane. But Shane's gone to the video game route. Matt still does video games writing on the back end. And he just finished his last big job was this new Marvel role-playing game, this new Marvel multiverse role-playing game. He wrote that. And it's like, dude, he's doing all right. He ain't crying at all. And just listening to them and their work ethic and what to do and how to do it really set me up for success. I mean, look, I'm no rocket scientist. I'm just a guy who realizes if you put your head down and just go and just keep going, you'll get there before you even know it. And people are like, how'd you get there? I just put my head down and did what I had to do and continue the work.
Put your blinders on and then you look up and someday you're there. But in your wake, though, behind you, there are hours and years of effort.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but they've paid off for me. Because once again, I can look back and be like, this is where I started. This is where I am. And if you're just in it for the money, some people are just in it for the money. Look at the money you could make. And their guy now in 5e making tons of money. That is a gold mine thing. I don't get 5e. It doesn't excite me, so I don't care about it. I'm like, knock yourself out.
Dude, you're speaking okay. I like 5e as a player, but most of my gaming, I am the DM, GM, referee, what have you. And I find 5th edition very uninteresting to run as a game master. Particularly, the monsters are all very samey, and the game's called Dungeons and Dragons. In 5e, dragons suck so spectacularly, it's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed by 5e dragons.
Well, and I get what they're trying to do. I just don't like the way they did it. It's not for me. And, look, I have sold 5e products. Don't get me wrong, because I know there's money there. But it's not like I'm quitting everything going to 5e. It's like, I did some things that I thought they needed to be done because I like doing them, and that's why I put them in there. But it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to make 5e products forever. And it's like, And also, the whole thing with the DMs Guild and the 50% cut. And I'm like, okay, I'm kind of not mad at that, but I am mad at that. Because if you're a new player, you don't know any better, you think that's a good deal. And they're like, yeah, and anything you write, we get to get access to. I'm like, wait. You're going to take 50% and get access to stuff I do create? Like, wait a minute. Who's winning on that one? People are like, well, look at your name in the book. That doesn't mean most people don't recognize people who do gaming stuff. You've got to work yourself a name. You've got to build your own name. And what happens a lot of time in D&D, there's like 6 or 7 people working on something. And you might get your name on it, but you got to do like a ton of books to give me notice. It's to a point where I'm like, well, I'm not doing all that. And why would I do it all for them? And all for 50%? Oh, I'm like, it's like the downsides are crazy. Yes, I get to use their artwork. Yes, I get to sell in the shop. But at the same time, there are restrictions. There are restrictions. There are restrictions. And it's like every dollar I make for me is a dollar I made for me. There's a rapper by the name of Russ. And Russ is a totally independent guy. And I'm a big follower of his because, he, like me, has a very do-it-yourself mentality. And people especially big companies, hated Russ. But he was like, fuck the companies, go independent, do what you got to do. And Russ, also another one, release a song a week. He did like that for 3 years. It's like, how many guys release music a week for 3 years? And it's like, and he's made a ton of money. He's done very well. And like, once again, if I worked for WOTC or some other big company, it's going to take me a long time to A, get known, and B, to make any real money. Because you got to be stuck. But for every dollar I make on my own at RPG Now or anywhere else, that's my money. It goes right to me. And if you keep your overhead low, which I do, you use stock art, which I do, all that money can come back to you on some smart investments. And that's all people have to do. Just pick some smart investments, pick something that's controversial, and do it. One of the games that initially started out as Undead Nazi Elves.
Why elves? Because undead Nazi, that's a trope all on its own. So I guess that you add elves to give it some, I don't know, some panache.
Let's just be honest. Elves are Nazis. Blonde hair, blue eye, live forever, think they're better than everybody else. Oh, they're Nazis. 100% Nazis. You make them undead because they're really like, ooh, that's a different little spark to it. Undead. Oh, okay. And that developed into a campaign world that we did called Obsidian Apocalypse. Originally it was Obsidian Twilight, then we converted it and made it much larger, Obsidian Apocalypse. And it's like, and really what it was, we took Dark Sun and Ravenloft and put it together. That's what we're doing. We're doing Dark Sun plus Ravenloft, that's what you get. And people heard that and were like, oh, I'm sold. That's all I need to hear. I'm sold. And we sold a ton of those. We did a Kickstarter, did very, very well. That book has even when I think about it, that book has an emotional center. We did the Kickstarter, and we got it done. At the same time, my wife died of cancer. She died of brain cancer during that same time. And, it was not a good time for me. And I tell people, people are like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, I married the right woman. She got the wrong deal. She married me. I got the good deal. I married her. And, when she passed away, I was not in a good spot. But I knew I had people at a Kickstarter that I had to finish a Kickstarter, had to give them a product. So we wrapped it up. We got it done. I dedicated it to her. And, I got it done. I got to say, even in my worst moment ever, I was able to still do the thing I was going to do, was deliver the product to the people that paid me for it. And this is a little dirt on some people. There are a lot of guys in Kickstarter who make products who doesn't see the light of day. They take the money and they run. They do whatever. And they raise a lot more money than I did. And I'm always like, Like, why don't people go after these people? But I'm like, all right, whatever, man. That's how they want to live. I don't want to burn people like that. I mean, Gareth Sarko, we didn't like each other. And he was the first big guy to get really big on the Kickstarter. He did his first one for Far West. He raised $50,000. Nothing saw the light of day. People got burned. Artists got burned. And it's like he ruined his reputation over it. And I always thought it was just so weird. It's like, if you would at least put out something and just said, hey, I messed up, people would have probably forgiven you. But like, he can't come back to the industry talking about, hey, I know about business. It's like, dude, you burned too many people. And then like Guardians of Order just had a Kickstarter recently. And their main guy burned a bunch of artists and didn't pay them. And this is from like years back. And I asked the question, I did a video asking the question, is it appropriate for you to support this Kickstarter knowing that he hadn't paid the other guy for his previous stuff? And I know he got mad at me about that, but I'm like, hey, dude, if you paid the people, you wouldn't have a problem.
That's really it, isn't it? Is that if you had done, don't get mad at me for pointing out that you did people dirty.
Right. And, and if people come to me, it's like, look, dude, my wife died. My son, I found out, was losing his sight at the same time. I've done all this stuff going on. I still got the stuff done. Don't give me no excuses where you say you can't get stuff done. It's like, oh, so-and-so died. Yeah, I had that. That doesn't matter. Get it done. Oh, your child doesn't matter. Get it done. Those people paid you. Give them the money. Either give them the money back or do the work. Pick one. Pick one. And if you're going to do a cheap chintzy job, at least tell them it's going to be chintzy because of this, and be honest with it. But then you get people upset with you in the industry. Oh, how could you do that? That's so wrong. I mean, taking money and not delivering a product isn't wrong. Wait, what? And I've always said I'll be blunt. There's a secret group of cabal of people who only want certain people to thrive in this business. I've been here long enough. I worked with enough people, and I talked to them. There was a company. I won't say their name because but there was a company that I couldn't figure out why we had. As I was always asking for stuff, I could never get stuff from them. Everybody I knew around me could. Other third-party publishers could. I couldn't, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I asked somebody who worked there. I was like, "What's going on?" They go, "Dude, you're like persona non grata here. Like, people like you, they're good, but they won't do work with you because the higher ups don't like you." I was like, "All right, I understand. I'm not going to get mad at you. I'm not going to get upset because hey, that's what happened." And that's why I said, stay independent. No one can fire me. I'm my own boss. I put up the stuff I like.
I don't want to get too into it because I can only say this, that allegedly, I don't know if it is still around, but for a very long time, there was an industry email chain.
There was.
Called the Weasel List that got passed around and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I understand a little bit of what you're saying, and then I've been to many Gamma Expos, or what used to be GTS. I've been to many other conventions, both as a fan, as a professional, etc. And it's just like any other industry. It is a lot of who you know. A lot of those deals are getting done at 2:00 in the morning at a bar or someplace else. And, it's a lot about individual relationships. Now, as much as I love conspiracy, I want to believe that there is a secret cabal of cool kids.
I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think it's very true. There is a group of look, I've run into enough people in this industry to know that I know personally that work for me and work for the people that, that know what I'm about. It's like certain stuff gets moved a certain way because certain people did this. Certain things, and that's the way it happened. I'll tell you my favorite one. This is I can't call this an issue, but it's an issue. So when I first created Haven City of Violence, we thought about going to D20 Modern, like I said. At the same time this is going on, Alderac Entertainment is doing Spycraft. And Spycraft's going very well. Da, da, da. Now, Spycraft had a license that you could use to make their products. And I was like, hey, I like Spycraft. I think it's a cool system. I think I'd love to make products for you. And they kept saying like, yeah, we would love that. Yeah. Well, we'll get back to you. And I kept calling them, reaching out to them. They never seemed to connect like that. Then I found out later two things. Number one of the in-house guys was working on his own system. And, he's a friend now, but he was working on it called 10,000 Bullets. It didn't come out on time like it was supposed to. It got delayed. Finally came out years after it was supposed to. When I could have come out with my stuff. And I didn't know what was going on. I heard rumors, but I was like, no one ever actually said it. The other part is that they told me, a very good friend of mine told me, he's like, they're terrified of you. I was like, huh? He goes, they're terrified. He goes, your product fits in a niche they don't actually have any control of. And if you put your thing in it, you would take customers away from them. They were legitimately afraid of you. And I was like, wait, I just want to make cool stuff. They're like, nope, you were never going to make anything for Spycraft. Never did. Never did. Never did. Knew everybody on the development team. Knew everybody who was making third-party products for it. Everybody. Not me.
May I ask a question that is going to sound ignorant coming from a cracker?
Let me hear.
Did you ever think it was about race?
No. That's the funniest thing. In gaming, I've never felt it. It's never been about race.
This is something that I'm fascinated by because you and I both at different times have done videos calling out the industry for their absence of diversity, the lip service, right. I should say. Right. But you've, as a gamer, because I just thought, it's 1981. You're a young black kid getting into gaming in Connecticut.
Right. Not a lot of people doing it.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, and even in comic book, I was one of the few guys. Then, and as it's grown, it's gotten more people in. Not a ton more, but more that I'm like, okay. But I've never felt racism in gaming. I felt a little racism in comics, but never in gaming. And I'm like, look, I think gaming is a little different. It's more, you sit down, you're across from somebody. It's hard to hate somebody when you're working in a team and doing stuff.
Right.
And you meet them and you find out you like something, they like something. It's like, you make those connections. I've never thought it was race, especially with me. It's like, it's all me personally, my personality. I'm a special guy.
I'm going to ask a more challenging question, I think, or at least I think it's more challenging. I could be wrong. Were you ever discriminated against in the black community for doing something that was considered white?
Oh yeah. I was that goofy kid that's like, oh, he's such a nerd. Look, I read comic books since I was 10 years old. So, now it's 51. Marvel Comics, Marvel Cinematic Universe is everywhere and everyone loves it. And I think it's hilarious that we're watching these movies and people are like, oh, they're so innovative. I'm like, that story's 40 years old. That story's 60 years old. That story's just like innovation. You're talking about stuff that I did when I was a kid 40 years ago. And you're acting like it's new. It's like, it's nothing new. I don't mind being an outsider. I'm good with that. I was always a new kid because we moved a lot. So every 2 years, my parents basically moved when I was growing up. So I always got to be the new kid. And then we settled in Connecticut and I was there for 8 years. And, I was a geeky kid who liked science fiction, who liked comic books, who liked that. I was that nerdy guy. Couldn't play basketball. Still don't like basketball. I was that kind of kid. And then when I went away to school, I met a lot of girls who didn't care with the nerdy guy. And I was like, oh, they just like me as they like me. And I got in that whole phase of life. And then when I got out of school, I realized, well, this is what I like. I like what I like. I don't care what people think. And then I just became comfortable with what I like. But by that time also, and we're talking in the late 90s, it started getting popular. And then 3.5 comes out and it blows up and it becomes popular all over again. And now, in my 50s, D&D is popular. D&D is mainstream. And I'm just like, what? D&D is what? Mainstream? Comic books are mainstream? It's like,
I never thought. If you had come to me 20 years ago and said, hey, Brodor, you're going to live in a world where for the most part, marijuana is legal or decriminalized and everybody in the world is going to love superhero movies and not just Batman, Superman, but we're talking like some obscure Ant-Man shit.
Right. You're like, what?
Oh, yeah.
What?
And Dungeons and Dragons Critical Role is going to be one of the most popular shows on YouTube. And I was just like, that's a lie. That's just none of that's going to be true.
It's like, that doesn't make sense. What are you talking about? You sound like you're on crack. Well, yeah, because it is crazy. It has happened. The geeks have taken over. Now the problem with the geeks have taken over, they have taken the bad habits from the people previous, aka Animal Farm, and it's all over. That's all that's happened. You meet the new boss. Same as the old boss.
You know why I like you so much is that you're not afraid to be cynical like I am. I'm very cynical. And it's not even cynicism, it's realism, right? It's just how the world works.
And it's like, it's okay to say that. People are like, well, no, let's just tell the truth.
It's like the Pathfinder 5 ebook, right? People got so butthurt about that. I watched your video more than once on that one because you were talking about another show. I don't know.
Yeah.
Knights of the Drinking Table or something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I did not mean to deliberately misname their podcast, but the 5e thing, it makes tons of sense because what people weren't talking about is that Paizo did a lot of Pathfinder stuff for Savage Worlds. And that was a very successful Kickstarter for them. And it was, what did they do? I mean, it wasn't that many people. I want to say it was like, I don't know, $40,000 or something around there. Right. That's not a small amount of money. Imagine what they're going to get if, as you said in one of your videos recently, if WOTC, if D&D is 90% of the RPG table, if I can get 3% of that 90% to look at my game and consider buying my book. But the other thing is that, dude, Paizo's not stupid. They're hurting. Bad news doesn't come out about your company when you're doing well, right? People don't get all butthurt and complain about management and want to unionize when things are going well. They don't do it. That stuff comes out when you're doing financially poorly, after you've done a big Kickstarter for Savage World stuff. They need that 5e money.
I'm one of those guys of, I like Pathfinder First Edition, but it was solid. No problems with it. They did Starfinder, and I really didn't like how that came across. Mm-hmm. When I thought they were going to do science fiction. They're like, no, we're going to do science fantasy. And the first thing that popped in my mind, and this is definitely a weird throwback, Pinnacle Entertainment did the same thing with Deadlands. Deadlands had the main core book, and then they were doing a science fiction version of Deadlands. And then they did a post-apocalyptic version. And it's like, you're not getting new players. You're cannibalizing your other players from the main source. And they did the exact same thing. And it's like, I didn't understand why they just didn't go, okay, we're going to do a totally different world. This is going to be science fiction. Look, some people said it sells well. It sold all right. It wasn't like Means of Mastermind's first edition sales. But it was like, okay, I made money. It didn't cost too much. Okay, great. We didn't lose much. We didn't make much. And I think that hurt them. And then when they decided to go Pathfinder Second Edition, like I said, I was a full supporter of First Edition, and Second Edition was not good. It was not good.
Full disclosure, I have not played Second Edition Pathfinder. I had almost little interest in it, and I am not a graphic designer, but what I am is a dyslexic. And I can tell you that book is a grimoire in the sense that it is difficult to understand. The layout is, I just can't follow it. But then if you want to make a character, the amount of jumping around you have to do in the book, I just didn't want to unpack it. I was like, you know what? This is not for me.
I know why they did it, but at the same time, it's like, you didn't do it right. If they'd gone instead of 2E to 5, I said, we're going to do 5E because we think it's going to be hot. We're going to do 5E. We said, and if they'd done that and still put out First Edition, they would still probably be in a great place. But they would have gotten other players to try out the old, like, oh, Pathfinder's different. It's, you play D&D, but it's a little different. And you could have gotten some good cross action. Now I think it's, I don't use the word too late, but they shot the wrong target at the wrong time. If they had done 5E first and then done second, they could have converted a lot of people who liked their stuff from 5E to the new system.
Right. And they could have, I'm sorry. I was going to say they could have taken something like 5E and done exactly what WOTC is going to do with it over the next 2 years and make it a more complicated game, which is what a lot of people want anyway.
Right. And then also, and this is what kind of upsets me, the whole situation behind the scenes at Paizo that came out about the workers and stuff like that. And, my little personal story about that, Jessica Price, who used to work for Paizo, came out and personally attacked me. And she said this, and I'll say, I've never heard anyone ever say this about me. I've never wanted to rip someone more in half than her. And she said, and I quote, "You're not diverse enough." I'm like, I'm a black male in America. I'm the definition of diverse on everybody's charts. It's like you can't use the word diversity and not think of someone black. It's almost impossible. And her mindset was like, well, you're not, you're cis. And it's like, and? Well, cis males don't have, and she was she was this tirade against me. And I'm like, lady, I don't even know you. I've never met you. I don't know what your relationship is. And it's like, but I make games because I want to. And I always say, she's burned her bridges at a lot of different places. She's had some problems at a lot of different places. She's the one that made some accusations that some of the guys at Paizo were flirting with her. Okay. You're an attractive girl that most men would find attractive. And I'm sure if you worked in a cramped space, they would say, that's only pretty natural. That's nothing new. But the way that she took it, and I don't know what happened. I don't. But I'm going to give you guys the benefit of the doubt because in my thing, I've not seen them do that kind of thing. But it might be different. She might have a different experience with them. I can't negate hers. But at the same time, I'm like, there are ways you're going to handle this. I didn't like how you handled it. And I know you did. I know you handled me. So I can only imagine if these guys even tried something like that, you probably freaked out or at least said, nice dress.
Dude, you're going to get Ernie Gygaxed. You got to be careful. We're both going to get, I'm going to be the bunker guy now. We're going to get destroyed.
look, I tell people, I've been here a long time. I make games for fun. You want to get rid of me? Pack a lunch. It's going to be a long day for you.
Well, dude, and that's the thing is that, you've obviously said you've made the decision that not only do you love this hobby and do you want to contribute to it, but you're not going anywhere and you're not backing down. I'm fucking flabbergasted that somebody had the audacity to tell you that you weren't diverse enough. That's fucking insane.
But I mean, once again, I'm one of those guys like, I don't care who you are. Let's just be nice to each other. I'll say this in the nicest way. Look, I don't understand people in the whole pronoun thing. If you want me to call you, I'll call you whatever you want me to call you. That part doesn't affect. It's like, that's a choice you want to make. Great. Okay. No problem. But to act like because I am male and I have nothing to offer because you think that I have, it's like, wow, really? This is what we're doing. It's a real crazy time when the black guy becomes the racist. But I guess I've made it. It's like, well, okay, the white woman told me I was a racist and not diverse. Well, of course.
That's nuts too. Yeah. And again, it's something that I try to, because I don't care. Every important relationship in my life is somehow related to gaming. I don't care. I have straight people. I have gay people. I have black people. I have women, whatever. I've gamed with a lot of different people. If you're a gamer and you're into the hobby and you respect escapism and imagination and you want to engage in it, dude, I have no fucks to give about what makes you come or if you want to wear cat ears. I just don't care. But, if you look at the industry, so many people in it are bending over backwards to be welcoming and diverse. And yet here we are, it's still mostly doughy white dudes.
I don't mind it's doughy white dudes. What I don't placate me to placate. Oh, we've got to do diversity. Be natural about it. If you're natural about it, you shouldn't have a problem. But once again, if you don't know any black people, go to places like, hey, and to be honest with you, look, we're trying to get more people black people to play this. I don't know if you'd be interested. Would you just want to try it? Make it cool. There are tons of kids, and I love the word kids, playing Magic. Magic has no color. Magic has only winners and losers and people getting beat. And people understand that. And I think that's a great gateway drug to do tabletop. If they like Magic, if they like anime, they like comics, you can get them into gaming. It's not that far away. But, make some connections with them. And I think a lot of people, like the thing that drives me crazy with fantasy. It's like, great, European fantasy is great. I get it. But Jesus, there's other different types of fantasy you can do. I mean, when I did Neo Access for my stuff, I specifically described it as this, and this made the most sense to me. It's my fantasy love letter to Babylon 5. That's all it is.
You're a B5 guy?
Of course, why not? It's a fantastic show.
It's the best science fiction series of ever. Oh my God!
It's like B5. I mean, they did everything right on a budget that 1/10 of what Star Trek did. Now, don't get me wrong, DS9 didn't do everything right, but they did do a couple of amazing things. I have to give them credit where credit's due. The Pale Moonlight is still one of the best hours of TV. That's what I want. And Babylon 5, seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4 are just amazing. 5's all right.
You did that, but I mean, I don't want to wank on the listeners because I think Straczynski's a genius, and I could go down his comic book career and the whole thing. They got screwed, right? Because they thought the show was getting canceled, and they were like, "Hey, J. Michael, come back! You need to do another season." Yeah. He's like, "Fuck, are you serious? I gotta."
Right,
but you're right.
But it's funny. It's like that show. Well, it's like I've had the pleasure of meeting him once, and he was really, really polite to me. I got to give him a really polite, really informative guy, and really just interesting just to talk to, just like as a business. Like, wow, that's kind of crazy. And Babylon 5 is amazing, and that's right. He gets it. His formula works. But I'll tell you something that a lot of people never watch, and I always wish they should have. Jeremiah. Jeremiah is a show he did. It's based off a French comic book of the same name, but it's not really the same show. And Luke Perry appears in it, and Malcolm Jamal Warner, the two main characters. And something that he does on that show that I realized that's a style and technique. What he does is the first episode. If you watch it and you're paying attention, everything for the entire series is that first episode. And when I was describing it, he'll grab your head and say, "Look over here real quick." And then look back. You're like, "What was that?" So don't worry about that right now. We'll talk about that later. And that's what I think he's good. He shows you something that doesn't make sense. And then later on, the context becomes important. Like the episode on season 1 of Babylon 5, when you read Zastros. Mm-hmm. Like, none of that makes sense at all. And then, but you're like, why am I watching this? I don't understand. And then you get to season 3 with the payoff. You're like, oh, yeah. Oh. Mm-hmm. It's like, and that's to me, that's a brilliant skill. That's a guy who's like, this is going to pay off in ways you don't even imagine. Or Veer with Mr. Borden. I mean, we all thought it was funny till we saw it. Uh-huh. And they're like, oh.
Yeah, until you see his head. Oh, yeah, dude. Oh, amen. Oh, my God. And just Jakar. Just all the Narns. The Narns were my favorite. My favorite fucking episode, and I know that the audience is probably tuning out, but guys, I'm telling you, just go watch Deathstalker. That episode, when Natoth sees that essentially allegory for, this Nazi war criminal, this Mengele type character, when she sees Deathstalker get onto B5, grabs that wrench because there's no weapons allowed in the area and just tries to kill her right then and there. I was on the edge of my seat, right? I'm getting little goosey pimples talking about it, but the politics of immortality and what these different races are going to do to one another so that their wealthy elite, oh my God. And then at the very end, spoiler alerts, because it's only 1 million years old, when she's flying away on her ship and the fucking Vorlons show up and just rip her down, Kosh walks onto the deck uninvited and just says, "You are not ready for immortality." Right. Oh my God, just to have a super, there's so many wonderful things about that show. Oh,
it's like, I mean, they really, the Vorlons are still an amazing enemy, heroes. I can't even tell. It's like,
and
were they the good guys?
Yeah, they're this ancient balancing entity against Shadow, right? The show's so good. If people haven't seen it, it's really worth a watch.
That first season setup paid off a lot. I mean, and to set up so many things, and we're talking, this is like kind of pre-internet. It's still like the beginning. It's like the early days of the internet doing stuff. And I'm like, could B5 have been as good now? Because I think people would have wanted all the episodes, all of them. I think them doing it slowly could be done well. It's definitely a show of its time, and I say it like this: I'm glad Star Trek didn't grab that to make that DS9. I'm glad they realized while watching Babylon 5, going, we got to do different stuff. We got to really do some different stuff. We got to step our game up because they got some good stuff going on over there. We got to do better shows. And I always thought that made DS9 better. And, I'm an Avery Brooks fan. I've been an Avery Brooks fan since I saw him in Spencer for Hire as Hawk. I've always liked him. And,
holy shit, we are the same age. It's amazing. I love that show. Oh,
it's like that was premier television. And, look, he's a single black father with a young boy. And, I am a single father with a young boy, and just seeing how he relates to his son, that's how my father would relate to me. That's how I relate to my son. And I think, if you've never, and most people have never seen that before. That guy, the kid who played his son was a young kid, like 13, 14 when he got started. So by the time he's like 21, you see his growth over the show. And what I liked most about it, he didn't become like his father. He didn't go in a star. He's like, nope, you're going to be a reporter. You're going to do something totally different. And it's like, they didn't do a lot of the basic boring stuff that drives me crazy. It's like, and let's be honest, when Cisco had the hair, I know they didn't want to make Hawk, but really, the second he got the goatee, it's like, okay, let's not kid anybody. He looks better with no hair. We all agree. He has a better edge when he doesn't. When he has it. I give him a lot of credit. They did a lot of just good TV. And Garrick is still one of the most interesting characters I've seen in a long time. The spy who's trapped, can't go home, and you don't know if he's ever telling you the truth. You never really know. Just, what's good stuff. And then B5, B5 is B5. Good Lord. So many good ideas. So many just brilliant things.
I've never been a Star Trek guy, but out of all of the Star Treks, B5 is the one that I find that, if I'm flipping channels or when I had cable and you could do that, I would stop on DS9 and watch those episodes, even out of context, out of order. Yeah.
Listen, I think they finally figured out, Star Trek. I get it. It's supposed to be what it is. But DS9 really tried to do the different thing, which I got to give them credit. And then, of course, they went back and made, Voyager, which was just, oh my God. I always complain the same complaint. It's such a petty complaint, but God, it's so mean. It's like, how are you going to have a ship full of terrorists and your number 2 guy's a terrorist? He's the nicest terrorist I've ever met. He's warm and cuddly. And it's like, dude, come on. I understand you're fighting for it's like you're fighting for your land. It's like, they never, Chakotay was a waste of a cool character. Could have been something, never did anything, ever. And then, God, Enterprise came. Enterprise, the first 3 seasons was just straight garbage, just straight hot garbage. Like, this is horrible. How did you get to 3 seasons? Like,
Scott Bakula's he's a St. Louis, he's a hometown boy. He's a St. Louis.
I don't blame him. He got the material. He can only work with what he's with. And then Manny Koto finally came on the 4th season, and Manny Koto was on 24, making his real chop. And then he got on that. And it's like, that's season 4 of Enterprise. It's amazing. It's like, this is what I wanted. Why did we not do this? This is exactly what I wanted. And then Discovery came, and I saw that first season. I was like, this is straight garbage. This is hot garbage on levels I didn't think should be normal. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And the weirdest part for me, and I'm going to sound sexist, but I really don't care. You only had 2 males on the bridge, and I still don't know what their names are, and I don't know what they did. They were supposed to run tactical, but
I'm going to say something terribly controversial. I think that is on some level deliberately calculated, right? Like I think that they do that on purpose. And I think that somewhere someone wants to make, I don't know. You know what? Here's the only way that I can say it. Let me put it more glibly. I think it's very exciting that we live in a time of us versus them, and I happen to be them.
But I didn't think we'd become them.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about society today. The context and lens of who is or is not them is constantly shifting.
And here's my problem, though. Here's my problem with that mentality. Born 1970. I am 100% Generation X. Not even try to. I'm unabashedly, I am all about that. These millennials think that we're like these baby boomers. It's like, no, genius. We were the ones who grew up before the internet.
Yeah.
When you went outside and played with your friends. The stuff that you don't even understand that concept. It's like, without this cell phone in your hand, you can't do much. I can toss a cell phone away. I can still make napalm. Still to this day. Still make napalm, not even think hard about it. I can barely remember the Dewey Decimal System, but I know how to use a library if it came down to. I know how to think outside the box. Not everything's been force fed to me. I didn't get any participation trophies. I'm from a different era of person. And I don't know what happened to these kids. And I blame us because we tried to make them better. We said, we'll give them everything we want. Worst idea ever.
I'm not saying this glibly. I'm saying this. I really believe this. My grandfather's generation. So my grandpa was a first generation American. His parents came to the U.S. from French speaking Canada. He didn't speak English. He literally would get rapped on the hands, hit on the hands by nuns because he couldn't speak English. He couldn't answer in English. Anyway, his parents had children because you had children for labor. And then my grandparents' generation had children because they thought they had to have children to create farm labor, but they were living better than their parents' generation. And they were like, well, I've got all these kids. What the fuck am I supposed to do with them? And then my parents' generation, the hippies, they said, well, we're going to have kids because we're supposed to have kids, but well, fuck, we don't want kids. We don't need them to work around the house. So what we're going to do is, abuse them, hate them, neglect them, and leave them at home to become latchkey kids and yada, yada, yada. And this is sort of the big era of divorces and, split, broken families and this, that, and the other. And so our generation, man, I think that we're utterly disillusioned by everything.
We all knew don't trust anybody, and it all became out to be true.
Right. I mean, I never thought that I would live in a time where I'm lied to so much by two sides of the same political coin all day, every day, that I just can't even sift through what's real anymore.
Even worse than that, nobody takes responsibility for anything. Not anything. Yeah. Not the stuff they do, not the stuff they're involved with. Oh, that wasn't me. I got you on tape. Whoa, dude. There was a time when you used to be like, man, I just got to take this L and just keep it moving. Nobody wants to do that anymore. No one's to blame. It's no one's fault. Everyone's a special little snowflake. And no one's a special little snowflake. So, what are we doing? What are we doing here? What are we doing?
I don't want to go down the road too much because I have been, I try not to get political and sometimes I do because I'm passionate, and I've had people, reach out to me in the past and say, that was pretty political for a non-political show. So,
my degree's in political science. That was my degree. That's what I got my bachelor's in.
How did you get into graphic design if your degree's in poli-sci?
Because I love poli-sci. I like talking about politics, and it keeps me interested. I didn't even know about graphic design until I got out of college, really. Because that's, no one told you could make art like that. My parents, my mom's a school teacher. My dad was a business guy at Xerox. Very traditional, very, very solid, stuff. And, my father had a political science degree. He seemed to do all right. I got a political science degree. I did all right. And I discovered graphic design. Just happened to, making pretty pictures is always fun. I like comic books. I like to make pretty pictures. They're like, oh, you make money off this? Oh, really? And then, and when I got in, I got into desktop publishing just as it started. So I was one of those guys, one of the first guys getting in. So it was like being creative. And then when web started taking up, I was one of those first guys to take it up. And then when it really blew up, I was there and I was like, ooh, I need to get out. Because the longer I stay, the cheaper the labor is going to be, but everyone's going to know web. And it happened. Everybody learned web in school. They got to learn web design. So, like the last, I can say like in the mid 2000s, like 2009, so many of these like for pay colleges were producing graphic artists who are garbage people. I mean, just, at that point, I'm in my 40s, late 30s, 40s. I've been doing design work for, 20 years. So, almost 20 years in. And it's like, you could see the quality of skill was lacking. The desire wasn't, but the quality and understanding and having to, like a lot of kids haven't done newspaper ads. They've never had to do newspaper ads. And if you did graphic design and when I was, you had to do newspaper ads. I avoided 99% of it, but I did them. I hated them. I hated it. But you learn how to do that kind of work. It's gritty, and it's horrible work, but everybody learns it. Because it's important. The kids didn't do that. A lot of kids hadn't been to a press to see a book actually on press from a printer. A lot of guys never even put together like printer images to send to a printer. And I did all that stuff. I mean, I did all, because the time period, that's what you did. But now, I mean, and now, like I said, people are like, oh, you're going to send the book to print digitally? I'm like, yep. They're like, you got to check it? I'm like, nope, no need. I've done hundreds and hundreds of books. I can do my eyes closed. I don't need, I know the math's going to be. I know what the book's going to be. I know how it should look. It's, I know how long it should take to print. I know all that stuff. I've been doing it forever. So, and then now I'm at the point of like, I don't want to do it anymore. Actually, I've done everything I thought I was going to do, and I did it as well as I thought I was going to do it. Even now with websites, I was like, websites went from being something you had to learn through Dreamweaver, or you actually had to do some coding. Now, WordPress does most of that stuff for you now. There's Wix out there, and I'm like, and I was wondering, like, who's, I'm at the end of my career. I know why. It's like there's so many people doing graphic design. It's not even, there's no money in this. There's really no money in it. And I thought about, well, maybe I'll break out and go to TV. My TV guys are like, dude, it's worse over here. But every kid's got an iPad with iMovie on it or iFilm, and they're doing their own stuff. They don't need the technical stuff that we learn. Like, oh, that's right. So like we're at that stage of graphic design for what it is will still always be there. But there'll be so many cheap alternatives to it. It's not going to be worth the money it's going to pay to get these stuff designed. Now, there'll be guys doing custom work that look amazing, but they'll be like 1 out of 100. The rest of them will look good. Then you have one amazing. And that's it.
Well, it's getting late, at least certainly where you're at. So
yeah.
I want to pitch something to you and get your thoughts. So a lot of big movements and changes in the industry in terms of who's owning what. And, WOTC's made some changes recently in terms of their leadership, the new CEO, and WOTC, hiring the video game individual,
right.
Cynthia Williams, I think is her name.
Yeah, I think so.
People with digital backgrounds. Then they buy D&D Beyond. And then on April 21st, which is the first day of PAX East, by the way. On April 21st, they do D&D Direct live stream. Now, D&D Direct are because advertising is magic, right? And through the whole thing, D&D Direct, they're subconsciously feeding you the idea that you, the consumer, should buy D&D Direct, right? But I am very much of the opinion that WOTC is making a move toward digital. But I know that's an easy thing to say now, but if you go back in their history and you get a first edition 3.0 player's handbook, in the back, there is a disc. There's a little CD for your character sheet, right? I can tell you when I was a retailer at that time, and I was a retailer from 13 odd years for one company and then a couple of years for a big company called Miniature Market. WOTC does not like you. And when I say you, I mean the retailer, I mean the distributor.
Of course.
They have never wanted to be a partner with 3-tier distribution in the hobby market. They even went so far at one point to have their own retail stores so they could sell direct to the consumer. I really do believe that all of this is a 2 decades long plan that just was not technologically viable until now.
I agree with the statement, but I disagree with the time period. I always look at like my favorite company, they've got me for life, Adobe. Adobe was delivering products in the early, 2010s direct. Get on a subscription. You can use, and I'll never forget when that happened. So many people freaked out. They're like, oh, I don't want to pay for a subscription to this. And I thought to myself, it's like, look, when I bought Photoshop when I was, it was $400, $500. That's when I was buying it and copying and getting free copies like anybody else was doing. And they were losing tons of money, no doubt. When they got the subscription up, it works. It works well. It uploads. Everything's updated. I don't have to debate about it. It's all new. And I pay through it to the business. So it's not even, I don't even feel it anymore. I'm like, oh, yeah, I still pay for it. I don't know what the price is anymore, but I still pay. Whatever. We have to understand that realistically, D&D is still like 15 years behind where it should be. I have said, and I mean this in every ounce of my body, D&D not getting out there like Call of Duty, or any of the MMA, the MMOs online. It took them way too long to do that. That should have been done 10 years ago. Now them doing it now, I mean, they're just doing it now. I guess the whole COVID thing helped, but I mean, I'm surprised it's taken them this long. I think there was money always involved in here. I don't think it was as much money as everyone ever thought. When all this money really came out, how much money they were making, they said, oh, we got to get this digital. I mean, let's be honest. Drive-Thru sells their products through DM's Guild. I know one of the guys at DM Guild who does very, very well. When you think about how much money they're losing, it's like, okay, so WOTC gets, so it's 50%. Let's suppose WOTC's taking 30, 35% away from RPG. So they got 30, RPG now gets 15, 20%, and the other 50% goes there. Well, they're using these guys as marketing. That's all it is. Marketing, get more stuff out, great. But they saw that kind of money coming in. This money just coming in, and they realized, well, why would we print another book? We do books on demand, let people print them as they choose, and we don't have to spend that money up front. And if we make changes, we just reprint it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to us. It's just another product putting it out. And I'm not mad at them for that. I think that's a smart plan. And making your fan base love you and buy you direct is a smart thing to do. So, I don't have any negative thoughts to that. I guess my only negative thought would be the lies they tell us, like, oh, we're not doing 6th edition. Of course you're doing 6th edition.
It's ridiculous. I think, and I don't want to misquote him, but Monty Cook, and I'm going to paraphrase, said something a while back when 4th edition came out. And he was like, look, if you guys got to understand, when 3.5 came out, we were working on 4. You're always innovating in game design. You have to be innovative and you have to change your game to survive. You can't just say, oh, well, here is our 30-year-old rule set that we're still making supplements for. It doesn't work.
But I think this time, since it's going to be online and all digital, it might be the best thing for them. Because people can call it up when they need the rule. They can do your character sheet right there. It's the organized play aspect that still, no one has clamped onto that. Well, I'll say it. The guy who wins that one wins it all. Because, if it feels like, feel like Call of Duty, I should go take my character wherever I go. We play this adventure, I have a great time, and all everything is tallied behind the scenes. And I get to bring my character wherever. But it's going to get to a point where my character's going to get too old or die or something, and then you can push like retired, and then the character goes off into something like that. Ooh, look how this character died. And then when you play the organized play, at the end of it, they ask you some questions. Did your characters do X? Did they do Y? And that stuff gets tabulated, and the effects affect the future adventures, if somebody's smart.
Nobody's done that really well since Greyhawk.
And Greyhawk wasn't really that great.
Yeah, well, and they didn't have today's technology, but
right.
I think you're right. And I think that there's certainly a way to go with it if you do it digitally. And it's something that everyone can easily access if you've got the database and the servers and the blah, blah, blah. And frankly, guys like us, we're eventually going to die out and our grandchildren are not going to play with books. Everything's going to be tablet or digital.
Right. Well, but the good news is for us, it's like the actual designing of games is still a skill. You got to learn that. You can put together stuff. It's like, what makes a game fun? I got to build a good world. There's still, that kind of stuff. The mechanics to make it easier are there. Great. That's perfect. But the actual creation of it, that's still got to be exciting. It's like, Ravenloft is what Ravenloft is supposed to be. It's gothic horror, classic horror. Boom. People play that. They love it. Dark Sun, post-apocalyptic. And now Starjammers, space. There's specific genres that play out on anything on tabletop. Everyone's going to do it. So we're not doing really that big of innovative. Just, it's got to be interesting enough to go, ooh, what's that? I mean, Deadlands. Let's go back to that one. Deadlands. Cowboys and Indians with the Undead. Well, that sounds awesome. Okay, wow, that sounds really cool. And you've got magic, and it's tied into the cards. Oh my God, that's kind of cool. It's like those kind of little things you can't beat that kind of stuff. But once again, you got to get people who are really committed to supporting you like that.
I have to say, and I sincerely believe this is the best time to be a gamer.
Oh yeah. WOTC wants to support people. for now. I mean, don't get me wrong. There will come a time when WOTC's like, oh no, you guys, the independent guys, no. I don't think 6th edition will have an OGL. I think if they're smart, they will, but I don't know if it will.
Do they need to? That's my question. When you control as much market share as they do, especially with buying D&D Beyond and all the other assets that they control now,
Right.
you've got how many millions of people that were doing or were customers of D&D Beyond? Was it 10 million? Something like that.
Yeah,
So
something crazy like, well, that's a lot.
You've got this audience that you've purchased, but eventually when you've got so much control, like a Walmart or an Amazon or a China, you just no longer give people choice. If they want D&D, you have to get it from WOTC, you have to get it direct, and you have to do it digital.
Well, I mean, I always think that's also a bad piece of arrogance too, because that's usually when you get yourself caught in a bad situation. Because when you think you're the only player in the market, you act like the only player in the market. And the small guys, if they got any kind of brain power, will just keep sniping at you. And like I said, they don't need a lot to survive, but they can get just enough where it's like, gotcha, I got enough to survive, I'm good. Because I mean, look, everybody likes playing Dungeons and Dragons. Do you like playing in the worlds of Dungeons and Dragons, or do you like playing in a couple of worlds? Like, as far as Spelljammers is a very small niche. So's Ravenloft. So's Dark Sun. Forgotten Realms is kind of a standard, and Forgotten Realms is kind of boring. It is like, it's like because of who they are, they can't do radically cool things. They're never going to do Undead, not the Elves. And someone's going to want that. Not everybody, but enough where a Kickstarter might be a way to get that. And whoever figures out the tech of D&D Beyond that they can do for the regular third-party guys, I mean, like, God, what is it? I see their name. I can't think of it. I see the Foundry. No, that's not it.
Fantasy Grounds?
Thank you, Fantasy Grounds. And it's like those guys could be or should have been or should be the organized play. But they didn't. Which I'm like, why not? You have all the tech. You got people playing and people using their stuff. The second WOTC gets people using their tools, it's over for them. They're going to stick to all the minor league guys. But if they made a system where people can build organized play out of it, then you've got a whole different story. Because we don't know if WOTC is going to do that.
Right.
If they're going to do organized play, it's going to be their organized play. If you become the independent guy doing better organized play than WOTC, there was a company called Paradigm Concepts that came out in the early 2000s. The guys are from down here in South Florida. They did Living Arcanus for organized play. At one point, they were as big as organized play was in the early 2000s. If they were a bigger company, they could have probably survived and probably converted their stuff from 3.0 to 3.5 or even 4. They could have made it. They could have made it and been like the dominant force just because of having organized play.
Especially if you had a subscription service model, just like anything else, just like, as you were saying, as the people were doing a long time ago, but moving forward with that digital subscription model where I'm paying, hey, I spend $9.99 a month and I get access to these games and these materials and yada, yada.
Even them, I would make it even cheaper. I wouldn't even charge $10, like $5.99. And I would use the words like cheaper than Netflix, cheaper than Disney Plus.
Right.
Oh, that's pretty cheap. Yeah, okay, that's a good price. That's when people start comparing prices of, I like Disney Plus, but I really just watch it for a couple of things. I don't know if I need to spend that much. And Netflix, telling you, we're going to lose millions of people. It's like, it's done for you guys. If you guys, and they didn't think about developing their own content. If they had done that, they would be alive. They'd be alive. They'd be alive and ready to fight off the HBO. Because let's be honest, HBO, even Disney. Disney is using, comic books to sell. Mm-hmm. But it's like there's so many independent comic books out there they could use and pick up. Or I guess I couldn't. So CrossGen was still one of my favorite companies that went out of business. CrossGen was out of Central Florida. They focused on genres of comic books, them just being superheroes. They said, no superheroes. We're going to do genres of stuff that would fit a comic book. Brilliant idea. Brilliant. And, they did everything right, but they had the wrong guy at the helm. And, Marvel and DC are great, but come on, Batman doesn't make any sense. I don't get how you love Batman so much, because there's always a scene that I always go back to Batman jumps in the back of Mongol, who's like one of Superman's villains. And he tries to put like a headlock or choke on him. And I'm like, dude, this guy tussles with Superman. He flinches. He can rip an arm off by accident. And it's like, Batman is like, oh, I'm super powerful now. It's like, dude, you're just a regular dude with a lot of money and a bunch of cool gadgets. They're not bad gadgets, but it's like, at least Captain America had the common decency to go, I got a super soldier serum, boom. The Black Widow might have been human, but you didn't see her doing the craziest thing. You know, it's like, come on, this isn't.
Batman is a Disney character, right? Because he loses his parents. He's orphaned. He's orphaned. His parents leave him with a fuck ton of money. And instead of going out and doing good with it, he decides to wallow in his own despair and self-pity and go out and beat people up to get his rocks off. Now, I love Batman. I love Batman as the detective. I'm super into it. But I do concede that, yeah, it's ridiculous.
I mean, especially in the biggest problem is it's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. You got two legitimate gods and a regular person. And it's like when Marvel tried that, we got a futurist in a big battle suit that works. We got a god, and then we have this strong super steroided guy. So I can kind of, technology has gotten us to this point. Batman is just like, I just punch people and I kick them. And I hope no one kicks me in the leg at the wrong time where it breaks and I'm trapped. I mean, dude, you're a regular dude. You're a regular dude.
It's funny you say that. I've been rewatching The Boys on Amazon Prime. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
I just recently watched that scene where they were going to have basically the Daredevil allegory. And Homelander smashes his ears and he's like, well, now you're just another useless blind guy. And that was not me disparaging being ableist, listeners. I was quoting the fucking show.
I mean, but that's what happened. And it's like, well, you did have cool abilities, relatively speaking.
You're right. When thinking of Batman in the context of like the Invincible universe or the Boys universe relative to what it's pretty funny. That's why I love Black Noir, because I love the idea that I have this sort of Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes, silent ninja character who is super strong and fast, but also is festooned with blades.
You know, the concept of Batman is from the 1930s. I live in the 21st century. Why in the world are we still doing this? I mean, in the movies, we finally realized you don't need a secret identity. Mm-hmm. You know, you really don't need a secret identity. You don't. Spider-Man, yes. He's the only one. He's the only one who gets to wear a mask and everything. Everybody else, we know who you are. Right. Spider-Man, put your mask on. Gotta keep yourself covered up. You know, but everybody else don't know. See, we could talk all night like this.
Yeah, we could, but I should let you go because it's getting late on my end, so I can't imagine how tired you are at this moment. So give me just a moment here. Well, Lewis, I have to tell you, it has been a blast talking to you this evening. I have had a great time. I hope people will check you out. Wait, stop. Lewis, you have a Patreon we want to talk about before we go. Right. You've got LPJdesign.com. If people go to drive-through, they can search for Lewis Porter Jr., or they can just do LPJ Design and all of your stuff pops up. But I wanted to make sure to plug your Patreon.
Yeah, we have a Patreon at, patreon.com/LPJ Design. It's for our superhero role-playing game that we're doing for Music Masterminds. I'm basically building a Bronze Age, modern superhero world back when comic books were awesome. And I don't mean like Image Comics. I mean before that. I mean Phoenix Saga, when Frank Miller's writing Daredevil and even doing Batman, when the Avengers have Perez working on the artwork. I'm talking the greatest times because that's what I like. So we built a world like that, and we've been adding to it. We've been doing it now, 2 years. And we're still working on a campaign book. We've just got our first 6 adventures done and written. So I'm probably going to start releasing them. I keep saying in May, but I don't know if that's a lie. But I'm hoping to start releasing them in May, all the way to the rest of the end of the year. And then funny enough, I'm working on our year 2 stuff right here in my little notepad. And it's, oh my God, it's work.
You still do your writing on pen and paper?
I have to. Because when I'm on the computer, it's easy like, oh, what's this on YouTube? Oh, what's this? It's like, this can't distract me.
I do it because I hate screens. That's not fair. I don't hate screens. I have some weakness that I have to stare at it. I don't know what it is. Like I can go into a restaurant and there are TVs everywhere. I'm enthralled by them. I can't not look.
I think it more like free flowing ideas on pencil and paper than you do on computer. You can jot a note real quick, and it doesn't, you know what it means. It doesn't have to mean anything to anybody else, but you know what it means.
Yeah, you've got your own shorthand, and I do crazy shit where I've got different colored pens, and I've got this line going there, and this, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's all sort of paper vomit. Any which way, seriously, it's been really great talking to you. I would love to talk to you again. In a perfect world, I would have the money and time to set up like an old McLaughlin group, right? Where I would just be like, and Lewis Porter Jr., wrong. And then we would just go onto the net. We would just talk about the issues of gaming of the day. Yeah. I think that we would be a blast. We could get Joel Palmer from the foam LARP community. He is also a controversial and divisive person. Anyway, I have had a really, really great time to you. And folks, this is Brodor reminding you that this is why we game. Again, check out LPJdesign.com. Our guest, Lewis Porter Jr., has been a blast. Remember, audio editing by me, Brodor, and music by 99 Instrumentals. But most important takeaway, the only thing more offensive than speech crime is thought crime.